All right, this is chapter 1 of Multicultural Education in a Pluralistic Society. And after reading this, I hope that you recognize that no matter what you teach or where you teach, you're going to have culturally diverse students, because ethnicity and race is not the only way in which your students will be diverse. If you look at the brief contents, you will see that ethnicity and race, which is chapter 2, is only one way. We have class, socioeconomic status, gender, sexual orientation, etc., etc. So, that being said, the definition of multicultural education is, it's an educational strategy in which students' cultures are used to develop effective classroom instruction in school environments. So you have to get to know your students in order to know what their needs are and how to teach them best. It goes on page 4, to tell you what equality is and what fundamental beliefs and assumptions you should have as a teacher to support multicultural education. So you can go through those bullet points on your own. I wanted to clarify on page 6 what compensatory education is. It's at the top of the page. That just means it's education outside of the regular school day. So it's an after-school club or a weekend homework club or something like that. Moving on to page 14, the characteristics of culture, which there are 4 of them. The first one is that it is learned. The second one is that it is shared. The third one is that you can adapt your cultural beliefs and values. And lastly, it's always changing. So what your values are when you're in your 20s may not be the same as when you're in your 40s or 50s. And there is a great diagram that shows that in here on page 20. So your cultural identity will be changing as you learn more, as you have more experiences. The little puzzle figure on page 18, I think, is a great example of how cultural identity, how can I get this over there? It's pretty complicated. And it's made up of a lot of pieces of the puzzle. Page 19 talks about the informal curriculum, and that's just kind of the unintended curriculum, the things that you don't necessarily say out loud as a teacher, but the things that students pick up on. It says it guides the expected behaviors and attitudes of students as well. So we need to be careful not to assume things about students. I had one student, and those of you who have taken my other classes have probably heard this story many times, but he was from an Asian country and he would not respond to me. And so finally I did a little digging and found that in his country, because he was a boy, women are not respected in such a setting. And so he didn't want to make eye contact with me, and that was the way his culture was. So we worked through that. I mean, he needed to be able to look at me eventually in America so that he could learn. So it's kind of such a juggling act to not push off our American values on students of different cultures, but at the same time respect their values. So that was a tricky one, but we did figure out how to resolve it. I think that's all I wanted to talk about in chapter 1. You will also be reading Multiculturalism's 5 Dimensions, which is a great kind of summary almost of how you can be a good facilitator in a multicultural classroom, which they all are, by the way, because all of your students are going to be different. And I think that's about all for chapter 1. This is a really broad overview, so we'll start dipping into more detail as we go on throughout the text and throughout the course.